And it was on this day, July 23rd of 2021, forgot what year it was for a second there, that I finished the audiobook We Are Legion by Dennis E. Taylor. It's only been like 3 days since I finished Hero of Ages, so this was a surprising turnout, but I did a sci-fi audiobook for a break. I said that I might read a list of other things. I don't know if this was on the list of things I said I might read, but this is what I read. So I finished it maybe like 30 or so minutes ago. 35 minutes ago. So again, just like with Hero of Ages, I'm still settling in and taking everything in, but this one I don't have as much to say about because this book is a lot shorter and it has like a kind of linear path, not in that way, but it isn't like a super complex woven story. It's a chronological story, and because it's chronological, there's a pattern to follow. So again, I have notes because I'm trying to be more organized, and we're of course going to start with non-spoilers. So I wanted to start off with the things that don't actually have to do with the book, but my opinion. I am very satisfied to read sci-fi again. I missed sci-fi. I didn't really realize how much I missed sci-fi until I started reading this again, and I missed sci-fi. Oh my goodness, I really want to read Sun Eater and The Expanse right now, to be honest. I don't know if I should, but it's tempting. I really miss sci-fi, and it's no, like, this isn't a bad thing about fantasy, but you can really get stuck in fantasy if you read too much in a row. So, I'm really happy to read this. Also, the audiobook narrator in this was amazing. He was really good at improvising what was on page. There's some things that you just, if an author wrote gibberish, how do you pronounce what the author wrote? This audiobook narrator is really good at thinking on the fly and getting the voices, but also keeping all the voices close enough that they are still recognizable from their origin. Now, if you haven't read the book, that did not make sense, but that is part of the difficulty with doing voices in this, and he did it really well. So I do recommend the audiobook. If you're reading this book, I don't know what the paperback version is like because I don't own it, so shrug. But I could say that I enjoyed the audiobook, and I'm maybe a 70-30, 70 paperback or Kindle, 30 audiobook kind of person. So there's a lot of audiobooks that I would not recommend, and usually I end up reading the paperback for those. Once upon a time I listened to the Gunslinger audiobook, and I really did not like the Gunslinger audiobook. That's one I wouldn't recommend if I had to give an example. And I can't really tell you what was wrong with it, I just did not like it. So, I recommend audiobook form of We Are Legion, just to show that one more time. I think Audible's the only platform you can get the audiobook. So, that's why it says original. Alright, now to actually get into things I liked. I heard of this series because I was watching a book reviewer that I used to watch, don't watch anymore. And they heard the series because someone told them that it was the sci-fi version of Dresden. Now, obviously, I'm a big Dresden fan. No, that's not why I picked up this series, but it stuck in my mind that someone said that this was like Dresden. So coming into it, I was like, I wonder why they say that, because there were other people who said it wasn't. Some people who said it was. So I kind of wanted to know where these people were coming from when they said this stuff. Well, I see why people think it's like Dresden. It has the overall tone. Harry, in the Dresden Files, Harry's a joking character, and he makes pop culture references a lot. It's urban fantasy, so you're able to make pop culture references. Well, in this book, it's in the future, but the main character is from our current time, and so the main character can make pop culture references the whole time. And so, it's very similar how they behave and how when they bring out those references and how they always joke about it, the ways they describe things. I can see how people made that connection. They're not alike in like the contents or the plot or any of that. It's just the fact that there's an aspect where the authors bring in our everyday world a bit more. Some of our slang, I never really realized how many weird phrases I have day to day. Like, I realize there's a bunch of phrases that never made sense, like pot calling the kettle black or something like that. Don't make sense at all. You can Google the origin, you're still just like, why? And then there's things like raining cats and dogs, an idiom. Idioms are confusing. But then there's just those everyday things like shoot, meaning like go for the question. It never really occurred to me. The author brought it out in this. They were like, the main character would say shoot, and everyone would just be like, I'm like, you know what? They have a point. But basically what I'm trying to get at is that the everyday world gets incorporated in the story, and I love how Dennis E. Taylor did that in this book, because it was both like a mini conflict, and I mean conflict in a society versus self kind of way, kind of conflict, separates, and it like catches the reader on. The reader gets a bunch of the references that are hilarious. So yeah, I'm in the know in some areas of pop culture. I am very out of the know in other areas. I don't do actors' names. I can't do names in general. Like, I can meet someone in real life and it'll take me weeks to know their name. I can do faces. So when actor names came up in this, some of them flew over my head, but even if they flew over my head, they were done in a way that I could tell it was funny. I just didn't get why. But other things, you know, you have all the big sci-fi references. There was a Stargate reference. You should have seen my face when I found out there was Stargate too. Everyone does Star Wars and Star Trek. I'd never read a book that acknowledged Stargate until this book acknowledged Stargate. I watched Stargate as a kid, so I watched all three as a kid. So, but you know, it had oh my gosh, it has Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy and Star Trek. It had all the go-to jokes, and then it had a few of the extra 80s and 90s things as well, a few 2000s things. There's some reference to our everyday history, so it's very interesting. Moving on. On the topic of being interesting, just the overall like subject matter of what the book's about after you get past the part one. There's 2 parts in the book. If you get past the majority of part 1, just the subject matter gets super interesting. Just what the character's doing, what their journey is, and just watching them come across all these things and geek out if they come across something super interesting. There's a lot of relatability in that way. Like, I could relate to the main character a lot because, God, if I were out there doing what he was doing, I would be, I'd be like jumping around in excitement. It'd be a thing. So just overall, like, everything that's happening is interesting. And while I'm a bit slower on the fights, because again, I need to start reading things that have less fights, even the fights were like interesting because there's like a clear purpose and importance here. So, in terms of the sci-fi-ness, because it is a sci-fi book, I guess, this is according to other book reviewers, don't blame me. I guess that some people get concerned reading sci-fi on how technological the author gets. You know, how vocabulary advanced, how advanced their vocabulary gets. This is one of those books that's pretty much overall understandable. The character puts things into smaller terms because he's an engineer. He's not an astrophysicist, though he mentions that he was interested in theoretical physics or, oh god, it was one of the other physics areas, but it wasn't astrophysics. I would remember if it was. But he will get terms to simplify things over time. So if he makes like, this is theoretical, this does not happen. if he makes like a nuclear missile or something, he's trying to explain how the nuclear elements are put into warhead or something, he would give a bunch of smaller terms to explain that process, basically. So overall, it's pretty easy to understand. If you don't know anything about like general space things, then something you might miss like 3 or 4 things. If you're like me and you're interested in space, even if you're not in the field yet, one day, then you'll catch on when people say like the Lagrange areas, or when people say, or the character, or when the character talks about how when you travel a distance in space, the age and time travels differently based on Einstein's theories. So yeah, there's a bunch of call-outs to Einstein. If you know the basic of Einstein's things, then you'll get it. Obviously, if you're an expert in the field, you're going to understand everything in the book. So overall, I said that this is a fairly understandable book because all the things that I mentioned, Lagrange and Einstein, those are things that everyday people learn a lot. Like people who maybe like aren't invested in learning about space still come across that information, like trivia or their news or something like that. Maybe you watch Neil deGrasse Tyson once or twice. So, yep. Next, my overall thing for the non-spoiler section is that's just a really fun book. It's funny, it keeps your interest, and it keeps going. It doesn't really slow down. There's some parts that may be less interesting to you, but there's still something happening there that's a key role to the big picture. And once you start to combine the big picture, it becomes like, if you get out your star map, once you see the big picture, you can kind of like realize how big scale this is. Because reading the words and then like being able to understand how big this is are completely different things. So fun because it's funny, it's interesting, and there's like this whole understanding part of it. The new things that I've added since Hero of Ages, favorite character and rating. Again, this is a reminder that I suck at doing favorites. This is an exception. And doing ratings, don't trust my ratings because my ratings change frequently, and because the comparisons, like what I'm rating it based off of, makes no sense at all. Makes no sense at all. That's a good song. So, my favorite character is Bob. I wonder why. If you've read this book, you know why. So, it's very simple. Bob's my favorite, and even if you count the different iterations, if you've read the book, you know what I mean, the original Bob is still my favorite. So, as it stands, I think he just has a lot going for him. Some of the other ones are interesting. I think Riker's a bit interesting, but maybe not all that much. I liked Milo a lot. And Bill. Bill was also the other one. It's a little bit hard to keep track of names. And I liked the doctor at the beginning of the book that I don't remember his name. He was funny, but I don't remember his name right now. It started with an L, I think. I'm sorry. But Bob is my favorite character. And the rating I gave it, again, if this is Goodreads and you do the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, keep in mind that when I rate, I'm comparing it to other books, no matter their genre. So this one got a 4. The lowest I'll ever rate is a 3 or, a 2. I gave a 1 rating once upon a time, but, the lowest I'll rate modern day with books I'm interested in is like a 3. 4 means I was satisfied and I'm happy with the book, and 5 means this is a really, really good book. Oh my god, what happened here? 5 is my oh my god. 4 is like, I really enjoyed this. 3 is like it was worth reading, but eh. So I gave this a 4. I enjoyed it. It was really fun. It was really funny, and it's a short book. Also keep that in mind through all of this is that this is like a 10-hour book. I just finished reading a 27.5-hour book. So, there's a lot of contrast in here. And with that, we go on to spoilers. So time to shift over to spoilers. Woo. Okay. Alright, so there's no particular order to my notes here. I just kind of wrote them as they came to my mind. So the first thing was discovering life. Discovering life is really interesting. My dad and I have spent a lot of time discussing this. Whenever you go hiking, I don't know if any of y'all have been on long-term, multi-day hikes in the mountains and plateaus and stuff, but when my dad and I go hiking, sometimes this is one of the things we come up with is just general theorization. We exclude chemistry or any of those things. We just, in general, talk about maybe possible predictions. And one of the ones that has come up frequently is, what is the possibility of life? And we know the data science behind that. We both looked at it. There's the possibility of life, and then you can go deeper and you could go into what's the possibility that the life already died before. Because we know Earth has been around for this much time, or life has been on Earth for this much time, humans have been on Earth for this much time. And if you take that time frame and you can compare it to the big time frame, it's entirely possible that other planets' version of this time frame are like over here in the past or in the future. And so, because we're in like this 1 year, and everywhere else they're in like a different part of their timeline. So even if we somehow had a frick ton of planets in like the, oh my gosh, the sweet spot zone from a decently sized star, even if we had a bunch of planets like that, we talked about the entire possibility of just being there at the wrong time. And so that's like an example of what we'll talk about. Again, it's highly theoretical and we are not like studying the area at all. We're just kind of basing stuff off of what we already know, even though I'm sure there's more sophisticated stuff out there about all of that already. We just are bored while we're hiking. But this book talks about the study of life. It talks about how the size of the star and the perfect zone and all that stuff matters, and how the sun is actually a pretty decently sized star, and that they're not the easiest to come by, especially if you're only counting the stars near you. But the author did his research, he did the sizes, he knows like this is like 7 times the size of Jupiter. He has all that, and he has the discovery of life. And it's really interesting. So there's 2 instances where he discovers life. The first one is really interesting. There's the pig bats, whatever you want to call them. And there's like Aristides. Is it Aristides? Oh God. I think I just mixed Dresden and We Are Legion. There's a character in Dresden named Aristides. His name starts with an A, and it's kind of like that. So there's like the one cub of the tribes. They're in like a more primal stage, and the cub can like understand like research and curiosity and stuff like that. Really fun to watch both the cub learning stuff and also Bob freaking out about the cub learning stuff. Just Bob's overall like excitement at things is really enjoyable, and I so get it. So, Discovery of Life is really interesting and fun. My next thing was the lightsaber beam, because we just have to talk about the lightsaber beam. Really cool, badass, and an amazing idea. Lightsaber beam. The status of Earth politics. Just wow. Can we pause and put a wow on that? Just the fact that there's like a theocracy, theology, I don't even know what you call that. It's a government based on religion. The fact that that's what America, in quotes, it means borderlines changed, became. And then there's like all the stuff about the United States of Eurasia and stuff like that. And the fact that it devolved into the entire Earth becoming a nuclear war zone, except for New Zealand. Just the fact that Earth is just gone now. By the end of the book, Earth isn't even something you can really look back to live on, because it's become a wasteland and, you know, greenhouse gases and everything. I mean, that's not even greenhouse gases, that's just nuclear gases all of the atmosphere. It's bad. So, yeah. Hearing it escalate, like, at first you think, wow, that's pretty bad, but I'm like, it's still Earth. And then hearing each update where it becomes like full-on war, and then everyone's racing to space, and then they get back to Earth, and the population is like from here to here. Yikes. Just yikes on that. Philosophy, there's a bunch of philosophical questions that Bob has about himself, and some of the later iterations of Bob have about themselves regarding like how human is the AI, do I have a soul, and those things. Usually I just don't care about those questions, but having them in this context made them a little bit more interesting, seeing Bob be like, I was a person, but now I'm not. I'm a robot. What do I do? So having him work through those things is very interesting. I like how the author did that. And space is beautiful. The author makes sure to take the time to like include all the geekiness and excitement at exploring space. And again, Bob's excitement at everything he comes across is very entertaining. And my goodness, who would not adjust their path so that they would go past Saturn? I mean, if you have a path out of the solar system and Saturn is like just a little bit away, why would you not go past Saturn? There's no reason not to, and it's freaking beautiful and amazing and really fascinating. So, yeah, just, it's really good. And again, I'll just repeat myself, overall, the book is fun. So, it's fun and it's fast. So if you want like a fun, fast read with some funny references, you get the chance to yell Khan out loud, stuff like that, then I would recommend to you We Are Legion by Dennis E. Taylor. Woo. And that's all I had written down. Again, I don't have the most in the world to write down on this subject because it is a short book. It flies by. And a fair amount of the book is like crafting and resources and understanding situations and stuff like that, but yeah. There's a lot of opportunity to imagine yourself in the same situation, which is also interesting. Alright, so I have some weird, not so usual announcements. I readjusted my bookshelf again, I don't know if you noticed. It's kind of pointless at this point because I'm moving soon. As I said last episode, I am moving in quite a bit less than a month, but I decided to reorganize my bookshelf anyway, even though I'm going to change it in just 2 weeks. There is a problem when I organized my bookshelf this time. Some things didn't fit, so I wanted to say what I took off the shelf. And the reason why is that 5 of the items I took off my shelf are things you guys didn't know were on the shelf, because they're thin and hidden. But first, I'll announce which series I took down. And it's kind of ironic because I'm actually tempted to read this series since I took it down. I took down Greatcoats. Now, there's no particular reason why Greatcoats was the one that went, other than the fact that the size made that size fit. Which is a shame. But the 4 Greatcoats books, we have Traitor's Blade, we have Night's Shadow, we have Saint's Blood, and Tyrant's Throne, which is a pain in the ass book to get. This book was $26 plus shipping for me to get, and it took me 2 months to find it. I'm sure that there's like a much easier way, but back then I was struggling to find copies of that book. I took this series down again just because of the size. I only have read Traitor's Blade, and ever since I took it down, I've looked at it and been like, I want to reread that. So I think I'm going to do like a scan. I'm not going to like read every word. I'm not even going to read every chapter per se. I might like skip a chapter, but I'm going to reread some of my favorite moments and some moments I forgot about. probably tonight. I might just do this. Except for the fact that I have D&D in a few minutes, so I should probably hurry a little bit. This is a book I haven't read, so this would be the next book whenever I get back to the series. I might do it now, but also I'm still invested in Powder Mage, and later on I'll talk about the other book that I actually read a chapter of, for no reason other than to take a break from We Are Legion. And the 5 other things I took off the shelf. My 5 comics. I had 5 comic books on the shelf. I should clarify, these aren't like my 5, I have a box of comics. These aren't my 5 favorite comics. These are like the 5 comics that first stood out to me. So this is like the ones I came across first, I guess. You should keep in mind that the comics I have in a box don't have to do with each other at all. There's no pattern or order to them, which is why I can't really say that I read the comics, because I haven't. There's like half of them are DC, half of them are Marvel, some of them are other things. And then there's the fact that I have like issue 2 and then issue like 89. It just doesn't work. But the 5 of the first series I came across, we have Spider-Man. This says that it's from number 2 of 5 of a limited series. I don't know what the series is. I don't actually know how to read these covers. The next one, also Spider-Man. It's Ultimate Spider-Man, number 79. They're all still in the plastic, by the way, of course. Obviously. These two's plastics haven't been opened. We're going to do that one last, so that way I can do an adult warning. We have the Legendary Star-Lord. This one I have read recently and frequently, so it's still open. But it is in plastic. And obviously this is a great one. This is number 12, if you're wondering. We have... This isn't technically a comic book, but it's a graphic novel. I have the Last of Us graphic novel. I'm a really big fan of Last of Us. I have a Last of Us poster right there. I played Last of Us when I looked like Ellie. I had her hair in a ponytail and everything, and I was her age, and it stuck on me. So the graphic novel, it's really good. I recommend getting it if you're a fan. And the last one, it's clickbait. So if you've ever seen any DC or Marvel comics with like a female lead, I think you get where I'm going. Just a quick warning on boobs in case you care. But I have the Catwoman, of course. I don't even know which one this is. Number 1, August 1993. That's what it says. It says it was $1.95 in the US. But I have Catwoman. And I always found it funny every time I got it out. I was like, oh yeah, boobs. So, anyway, these don't fit on my shelf any longer. They were actually down by the butcher books, is where they all were. But they don't even fit there anymore. And the fact that I can't fit something this thin on the shelf is saying something. So, whoops. And that's that. Now, to go super speedily, because again, I'm going to be late to D&D, I read one chapter, or not even a chapter, I read 1/8 of a chapter, because the chapters in this book are freaking huge, of The Journeyer. The Great Salt is the name of the section I'm in. The Great Salt. The chapter I'm in. So I went ahead and I read one section of it. It's actually only like 48 pages total, so I might actually just get The Great Salt done really quickly, or I might just do it while I'm reading other books. Aside from that, I think it's time to start Powder Mage. Again, I might put a little bit of thought into starting something else. I could probably finish Farseer before the time I move if I start it now and go through it quick. But I hear that that's one you want to savor, so I think I'm just going to go for Powder Mage and enjoy the journey. Nothing else is all that different from what I said in the Hero of Ages video, though. Really, what I'm going to read next is kind of up in the air aside from Powder Mage. So, that's all I have to say. I'm going to go to D&D now. Bye-bye.